Commander Hyun-ki stared at his screen with growing confusion. For 2 years he had watched the same terrible dance of death in Sector Kappa 7. Every day brought new explosions, new death, and new reasons to hate their enemies. The Vorthak Empire's massive warships fired their plasma cannons at anything that moved. The crystalline Nexari ships responded with their ice-cold laser beams that could cut through steel like paper. And somewhere in the chaos, the bug-like Zephyrian swarm buzzed around like angry wasps, their bioships spitting acid that melted armor. 17 star systems had become a graveyard. Planets that once held billions of lives now glowed with deadly radiation. Space stations floated as twisted metal tombs. The war had no winners, only survivors who were too stubborn to stop fighting. But now something impossible showed up on his sensors. "Sir," called his second officer, a young Vorthak whose scales still showed the bright green of youth. "We have a contact. It's strange." Hyun-ki's reptilian eyes focused on the data. A single ship had somehow entered the most dangerous space in the galaxy. But this was not like any ship he had ever seen. The readings made no sense. The vessel appeared to be made of simple iron and steel, held together with bolts and welds that looked crude even by ancient standards. Its engines burned chemical fuel like the primitive rockets his people had used thousands of years ago. "How did it get past our sensor nets?" Hyun-ki asked. "I don't know, sir. It just appeared. Like it walked through our shields." On the other side of the battlefield, tactician Sora felt her crystal body pulse with the same confusion. Her people, the Nexari, processed information differently than flesh and blood species. They thought in pure mathematics and logic, but the readings from this strange ship made no mathematical sense. "Analysis?" she asked her crew, her voice ringing like struck glass. "The vessel registers as primitive technology, tactician. Pre-atomic, age construction. But it exists in a space where such technology should not function. Our gravity wells should have torn it apart. Our radiation fields should have cooked any organic crew inside." Sora's crystalline form shifted through several colors as she processed this information. The mathematics did not work. This ship should not exist, yet her sensors clearly detected it. Deep in the swarm cluster, Queen Mother Dong-min felt the disturbance through her connection to her children. Her insect-like body, larger than a battle cruiser, housed a brain that could coordinate millions of warriors at once. But now that vast intelligence focused on one tiny, impossible target. The bioships around her pulsed with her emotions, confusion, anger, and something else. A feeling she had not experienced in decades of warfare. Fear. "What is it, Mother?" asked her eldest daughter, a sleek warrior form who served as her voice to the swarm. "Something that should not be," Dongmin replied, her mental voice echoing through the hive mind. "Something that breaks the rules." For the first time in 2 years, the three fleets stopped shooting at each other. Every weapon that had been pointed at an enemy ship now turned toward the small, impossible vessel that had somehow appeared in their midst. The strange ship seemed unaware of the thousands of guns now aimed at it. It continued on its slow, steady course, moving through space with the casual confidence of a merchant vessel traveling safe trade routes. Then it spoke. This message came on all frequencies at once, broadcast in broken galactic standard that sounded like someone had learned the language from old textbooks. "Hello there. This is Captain Wu Jin of the Earth vessel Defiance. I am here to end this war." The silence that followed lasted exactly 3.7 seconds. Then every command bridge in the sector erupted in laughter. Hyun-ki found himself laughing so hard that his scales rippled. "End the war? This primitive thinks he can end a war that has consumed 17 systems?" Sora's mathematical mind calculated the humor probability and found it approaching maximum values. The biological entity appears to be suffering from severe delusions of capability. Even Dongmin's swarm buzzed with something that might have been amusement. The little creature thinks it can succeed where millions have failed, but their laughter died when the ship did something impossible. The Defiance had been moving toward a massive asteroid field that marked the boundary between Vorthak and Nexari space. The rocks there were so dense and moved so fast that even military vessels avoided the area. It was a natural barrier that both sides respected. The human ship flew straight into it. Instead of being crushed by tumbling mountains of stone, the Defiance simply passed through them. Not around them, not over them, through them, as if the solid rock was empty space. Hyunki's laughter stopped. His clawed hands gripped his command chair as he watched sensors that could not be lying. What did it just do? On her bridge, Sora's crystal body flashed through the entire visible spectrum as her mind tried to process what she had witnessed. That is not possible. Matter cannot pass through matter. It is a fundamental law. Dongmin's vast intelligence focused entirely on the human ship. Her biosensors, evolved over millions of years to detect any form of life or technology, reported readings that made no sense. The ship existed. The ship did not exist. The ship was solid. The ship was empty space. All at the same time. The human captain's voice came over the communications again, sounding slightly confused. Sorry about that. Our navigation system is still learning to work with your gravity fields. We didn't mean to show off. Show off? Hyun-Ki realized that the human had done something that violated the basic laws of physics and considered it a minor navigation error. The three fleet commanders looked at their screens, then at each other through encrypted channels that connected their ships. For the first time in 2 years, they were all thinking the same thing. What exactly had just entered their war? Captain Wu Jin sat in his small command chair and studied the tactical display with the calm expression of a man reviewing shipping schedules. To him, the massive battle fleet surrounding his ship looked like any other logistics problem he had solved during his years running supply convoys between Earth's colonies. "Hey Wan," he called to his engineer. "Are you seeing any major problems with our systems?" Engineer Heywan looked up from her control panel and shrugged. "Everything looks normal, Captain. The quantum field is stable, the nano repair systems are running at 96% efficiency, and the gravity engine is purring like a kitten." Woojin nodded. "Good. Let's see if we can talk to these people and figure out what they're fighting about. Maybe we can help them sort it out." Around them, the most powerful military forces in the galaxy watched and waited, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. They had spent 2 years learning to fear each other's weapons. Now they faced something that made their weapons meaningless. A single human in a ship that should not exist, casually offering to solve their problems like he was mediating a dispute between neighbors. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is not the one with the biggest guns, but the one who does not understand why the guns matter at all. Captain Wu Jin scratched his head as he watched the alien fleets moving around his ship. He had seen similar formations before, back when Earth's colonies had their occasional disputes over mining rights. But those situations usually calmed down once someone explained the problem clearly. "Heywan, why do you think they're all pointing their weapons at us?" he asked. Engineer Heywan checked her instruments and frowned. "Maybe they don't understand our translation software. Or they think we're here to steal something?" Wu Jin shook his head. "No, I think they're confused about our ship. Look at those scanner readings they're sending our way. They're trying to figure out how we work." He was right. On every alien bridge, science officers were running scan after scan, each one returning impossible results. Commander Hyun-Ki called his chief scientist to the bridge. The elderly Vorthak hobbled forward, his scales dulled with age and study. "What can you tell me about that ship?" "It defies explanation, Commander. Our sensors show it is constructed of primitive materials, iron, steel, aluminum, basic chemical rockets for propulsion, but it moves through solid matter as if it were empty space. This should be impossible." "Should be." The energy requirements alone would drain a star, yet their power signature is barely above background radiation. They are either using technology beyond our understanding, or they have discovered something fundamental about the universe that we have missed. Hyun-Ki's claws clicked against his chair. Could they be from the future? Some advanced civilization playing with us? No, sir. The materials, the construction, even the radiation signatures, Everything suggests this vessel was built by a species that has barely achieved spaceflight. Yet it performs feats that our most advanced theoretical physicists consider fantasy. On the Nexari command ship, tactician Sora faced the same puzzle. Her crystalline mind processed data at speeds that would burn out organic brains. But the human ship remained a mathematical impossibility. The vessel phase shifts through matter, she told her crew. But phase shifting requires precise manipulation of dimensional barriers. The energy cost should be enormous, yet they appear to accomplish this with negligible power output. Her second-in-command, a smaller crystal being who specialized in military engineering, pulsed with confusion. Perhaps they have discovered a new form of physics? Or perhaps, Sora said slowly, they never learned that what they are doing is supposed to be impossible. The third perspective came from Queen Mother Dongmin's vast consciousness. Her bioships had evolved over millions of years to adapt to any threat, to learn from any enemy. But the human ship presented patterns that her genetic memory could not match. It repairs itself, she told her daughters through the hive mind, but not through any biological process we understand. The ship appears to use tiny machines that rebuild damaged sections automatically, like our own regeneration mother. No, this is different. Our bodies heal because they know their original form. These machines seem to improve the ship each time they repair it. The vessel is becoming more efficient, more durable. It is evolving, but through artificial means. The three commanders opened a joint communication channel for the first time since the war began. The urgency of understanding this new threat temporarily pushed aside their hatred for each other. Have your scientists found any explanation? Hyun-Ki asked. Negative, Sora replied. The ship violates several fundamental laws of physics simultaneously. My bioanalysts are equally confused, Dongmin added. The vessel appears to use technologies that should not work yet clearly do work. Their discussion was interrupted by another transmission from the human ship. Hello again, this is Captain Wu Jin. I notice you folks have been scanning our ship for a while now. Is there something wrong? Our engineer tells me all our systems are working normally. Hyun-Ki decided to respond directly. Human vessel, how are you able to pass through solid matter? There was a pause, then Wu Jin's voice returned, sounding genuinely puzzled. Oh, it's just quantum tunneling. We figured that out about 50 years ago when we needed to move cargo through asteroid fields quickly. You just convince the atoms that they're not really there for a few seconds. Convince the atoms? Sora's mathematical mind struggled with the concept. Matter does not respond to persuasion. Well, not persuasion exactly, came the patient reply. You have to understand that atoms are mostly empty space anyway. We just encourage them to remember that fact. It's basically applied philosophy combined with some field manipulation. Applied philosophy. The three commanders exchanged glances that somehow conveyed the same thought across three different species. What kind of people solve engineering problems with philosophy? And your repair systems? Dongmin asked. How do your machines know how to improve your ship? Oh, the nanobots, they're pretty basic actually. We program them to fix anything that looks broken, but also to make small improvements when they're not busy. It's more efficient than doing constant maintenance. Haewon's voice could be heard in the background. Captain, should I tell them about the gravity surfing? Maybe not yet, Haewon. They seem confused enough already. But it was too late. Every science officer in the three fleets immediately focused on this new impossibility. Gravity surfing? Hyun-Ki asked, though he was beginning to dread the answer. It's hard to explain, Wu Jin said. Gravity is like an ocean, right? You can fight against the waves or you can learn to ride them. We just ride them. Makes space travel much faster and more fuel efficient. Sora's crystal form flashed through several warning colors. You manipulate gravitational fields for propulsion? Not manipulate exactly. More like work with them. Gravity wants to pull things together anyway. We just help it do what it wants to do, but in directions that are useful to us. The three fleets hung in space, weapons still trained on the small human ship while their greatest scientific minds tried to process what they had just heard. These humans spoke of impossible technologies as if they were simple tools. no more complex than a hammer or a wrench. Human captain, Dongmin said, her mental voice carefully controlled. Your technologies appear to violate established physical laws. How is this possible? I'm not sure I understand the question, Wu Jin replied. We just solve problems as they come up. Earth doesn't have a lot of resources, so we learned to make things work with whatever we had. When you can't afford to build something the expensive way, you find creative alternatives. Creative alternatives. The phrase echoed through 3 command bridges, carrying implications that chilled military commanders who had spent lifetimes studying warfare. These humans had not developed superior technology through advanced science or vast resources. They had simply approached problems differently. Where the galactic powers had developed complex solutions that required enormous energy and infrastructure, humans had found simple approaches that worked with basic principles. And if they could do this with physics and engineering, what else might they approach differently? Hyun-Ki made a decision that would have been unthinkable an hour earlier. Human captain, we request permission to board your vessel. Oh, sure, Wu Jin replied cheerfully. Always happy to have visitors. Fair warning, though, our ship is pretty cramped. We built it for efficiency, not comfort. As the 3 commanders prepared boarding parties, each was thinking the same thought. They needed to understand these humans before those humans understood them, but it might already be too late. Captain Wu Jin stood in his ship's small cargo bay, watching 3 very different alien delegates step through the airlock. Commander Hyun-Ki moved with the careful grace of a predator, his scaled hands never far from his weapon. Tactician Sora's crystal body clicked softly as she walked, her mathematical mind already analyzing every surface and component she could see. Queen Mother Dongmin had sent her daughter Dalmi, a sleek warrior form whose bio-armor shifted colors to match her emotions. Welcome aboard the Defiance, Wu Jin said, offering a smile that seemed to confuse all 3 visitors. I'm sorry about the mess. We weren't expecting company. The cargo bay was indeed cramped, filled with storage containers, repair equipment, and what appeared to be a small hydroponic garden growing fresh vegetables. Everything looked functional but improvised, as if the entire ship had been built by someone who valued practical solutions over impressive appearances. Your vessel is smaller than expected, Hyun-Ki said, his reptilian eyes scanning the human-sized corridors and equipment. We built it for a crew of 2, Wu Jin explained. Haewon and I have been running cargo between Earth's outer colonies for about 15 years. When we heard about your situation here, we figured we might be able to help. Help? Dalmi's voice carried the confusion of her mother's thoughts. This is a military conflict involving 3 galactic powers. What could 2 civilians possibly do? Wu Jin scratched his head, a gesture that seemed to be his response to puzzling questions. Well, from what we can see, you're all fighting over the same thing. That's usually a distribution problem, not a military problem. He led them to the ship's small common area, where Haewon was working on a laptop computer that looked ancient by galactic standards. She glanced up and waved. These are our visitors, Haewon. They wanted to understand how our ship works. Oh. Hi, Haewon said, saving her work and closing the laptop. Sorry, I was just running some calculations on your resource conflict. Pretty interesting problem. Sora's crystal form pulsed with sudden attention. You have been analyzing our strategic situation? Not strategic, Haewon said, economic. We pulled some basic data from your public communications. You're all fighting over trilithium deposits, right? Element that powers your technology? That is classified military information, Hyun-Ki growled. Not really, Wu Jin said mildly. You broadcast energy signatures every time you fire your weapons. Haewon used to work for Earth's Department of Mining Resources before she became an engineer. She can identify mineral compositions from energy patterns. Haewon nodded. Trilithium-based power systems are pretty obvious once you know what to look for. The interesting thing is that you're fighting over natural deposits when artificial synthesis would be much more efficient. The 3 aliens stared at her. Dalmi spoke first. Artificial synthesis of trilithium is impossible. Our greatest scientists have tried for centuries. Oh, it's not impossible, Heywan said, opening her laptop again. It's just that you've been approaching it wrong. Look, she turned the screen toward them, showing a diagram that looked like something a student might draw in a basic chemistry class. Simple circles representing atoms, arrows showing molecular bonds, and handwritten notes in the margins. Trilithium forms naturally under extreme pressure and radiation, she explained. Your scientists probably tried to recreate those exact conditions, but that's the expensive way. You can get the same result with lower energy if you change the timing. Sora studied the diagram with the intensity of her mathematical mind. This appears to show a sequential bonding process rather than simultaneous formation. Exactly. Instead of smashing everything together at once and hoping it works, you build the molecule step by step. Like cooking a complex meal, you don't throw all the ingredients in at once, you add them in the right order. Hyunki's claws scraped against his armor. You compare advanced molecular synthesis to food preparation? Well, yeah, Wu Jin said. Most complex processes are basically the same whether you're cooking dinner or building starship fuel. You just need to understand the steps and do them in the right order. Dalmi's bioarmor flickered through several colors as she processed this information. You are saying that our scientists missed something obvious? Not missed, Heywan said, kindly. They were just thinking about it wrong. When you have unlimited resources and energy, you tend to use brute force solutions. When you have to make do with less, you get creative. She pulled up another screen showing production calculations. According to your public energy reports, each of your factions spends about 60% of your total power output on trilithium extraction and refinement. With artificial synthesis, you could produce the same amount using maybe 5% of your current energy budget. The aliens stared at the numbers. Sora's crystalline form cycled through the entire visible spectrum as her mind verified the calculations. These figures are accurate. But the implications are that this entire war has been pointless. Wu Jin finished gently. You've been fighting over scarce resources when you could have just made more resources. Hyunki's reptilian features showed an expression that might have been pain. 2 years of warfare, billions dead, entire star systems destroyed. For nothing? Not for nothing, Wu Jin said. You were solving the problem the best way you knew how. You just didn't have all the information. Dalmi's armor had settled into a deep purple that her mother would recognize as profound sadness. The Queen Mother must be informed immediately. This knowledge could end the war. That's the idea, Heywan said. Though you might want to think about how to break the news gently. Nobody likes finding out they've been doing something the hard way for years. Sora was still studying the synthesis diagrams. The process appears remarkably simple. Why did our scientists not discover this approach? Different perspectives, Wu Jin explained. Your people probably have amazing theoretical knowledge and unlimited research budgets. Our scientists learned to work with scraps and leftovers. When you can't afford to fail, you find ways to make things work that more comfortable people might not think of. He gestured around the small ship. This whole vessel was built using techniques that your engineers would probably consider primitive. But it works, it's reliable, and it cost about 1/10 of what a comparable military ship would cost. Hyunki studied the human captain with new attention. You are saying that limitation breeds innovation? Sometimes, when you can't solve a problem with resources, you have to solve it with creativity. Earth's colonies taught us that. We couldn't afford to build massive mining operations or huge processing plants, so we learned to do more with less. The 3 aliens stood in silence, each processing the implications in their own way. Their civilizations had spent centuries developing increasingly complex solutions to difficult problems. These humans had apparently spent the same time learning to find simple solutions to the same problems. There is something else, Dalmi said slowly. If you can solve our resource conflicts so easily, what else might you be able to help with? Wu Jin and Heywan exchanged glances. What other problems are you having? Heywan asked. Trade route security, energy distribution, territorial disputes, communication lag between distant systems. Sora began listing issues that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia. Oh, those are all pretty standard logistics problems, Wu Jin said. We've dealt with similar issues in Earth's solar system. Different scale, but the basic principles are the same. Hyun Ki felt something that might have been fear, not fear, of these humans. They seemed genuinely friendly and helpful. Fear of what their help might mean for the established order of galactic civilization. "Captain," he said carefully, "I think we need to arrange a broader meeting. There are people who need to hear what you have to say." "Sure," Wu Jin agreed. "Always happy to help solve problems. That's what we're here for." As the alien delegates prepared to return to their ships, each carried with them the unsettling realization that their most complex challenges might have embarrassingly simple solutions. The galaxy was about to discover that the most dangerous revolutionaries are not those who seek to destroy the old ways, but those who make them obsolete without even trying. Admiral Kite of the Galactic Defense Force sat in his office on the capital world of New Genesis, staring at a report that made no sense. According to his intelligence networks, the 3-year war in Sector Kappa 7 had ended. Not through military victory or negotiated surrender, but because someone had taught the warring factions how to make their own trilithium. "Computer, verify the source of this report," he commanded. "Report confirmed from multiple independent sources, Admiral. The trilithium synthesis method has been transmitted on open frequencies and verified by scientific institutions across 17 systems." Kite rubbed his forehead. The galactic economy was built on scarcity, rare elements, difficult manufacturing, processes, and complex distribution networks maintain the delicate balance of power between different worlds and species. If anyone could now manufacture trilithium using basic equipment. His communicator buzzed. "Admiral, we have urgent reports from the Nexus Prime trading station." "Go ahead." "Sir, a human merchant named Do Hyun has revolutionized cargo shipping. He's using something called just-in-time delivery to reduce transport costs by 70%. Shipping companies across the sector are demanding the technique." Kite closed his eyes. "What else?" "Research Station Kepler 442 reports that a human scientist named Ye Jin solved their energy crisis using what they describe as embarrassingly simple modifications to their power grid. Power output increased by 400% with no additional resources." "Anything else?" "Yes, sir. Trading reports from 47 different systems. Humans are arriving at commercial stations and solving problems that local experts considered impossible, always using techniques they describe as basic or simple." Kite stood and walked to his window, looking out at the sprawling cityscape of the galaxy's capital. Somewhere out there, the foundations of galactic civilization were being quietly dismantled by a species that seemed unaware of what they were doing. "Computer, establish a secure communication link with Earth." "Unable to comply, Admiral. Earth has not yet established formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council." "Then, find me someone who can reach these humans before they accidentally destroy our economy." On the research station orbiting Kepler 442, Dr. Ye Jin was having tea with the station commander and trying to understand why everyone seemed so excited about the power modifications. "It's really not complicated," she explained to Commander Veltar, a tall, thin alien whose species specialized in energy research. "Your fusion reactors were fighting against magnetic field fluctuations instead of working with them. I just added some buffer systems to smooth out the irregularities." Veltar's elongated head tilted to one side. "Dr. Yejin, our magnetic containment systems were designed by the finest minds in galactic science. They represent centuries of theoretical development." "I'm sure they do," Yejin said politely. "But sometimes the fanciest solution isn't the best solution. When I was working on Mars Colony, we had similar power fluctuation problems. You learn to work with what you have instead of fighting against it. But the energy increase, 400% efficiency improvement, should be impossible with simple modifications." Yejin shrugged. "Impossible is just another word for nobody's tried it yet. On Earth we have a saying, if it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid." Veltar looked at the readouts again. His station was now producing more clean energy than stations 4 times its size, using modifications that cost almost nothing to implement. "Dr. Yejin, would you be willing to examine our other systems? We have had problems with atmospheric recycling, water purification, and food production that our best engineers cannot solve. Sure, Ye-Jin said cheerfully. I've got some time. Before my transport arrives. Problem solving is kind of my hobby. Halfway across the galaxy, Do-hyun was explaining supply chain management to a group of increasingly worried shipping executives on Nexus Prime. The old way wastes too much time and money, he said, pointing to a simple chart on his tablet. You build huge warehouses, store massive inventories, and move cargo in giant batches. It looks impressive, but it's not efficient. Cargo Master Zon Uk, whose family had controlled shipping in this sector for 6 generations, studied the humans' proposals with growing alarm. You suggest we eliminate central storage facilities entirely? Not eliminate. Reduce. Instead of storing everything in one place and shipping it everywhere, you store smaller amounts closer to where they're needed. Reduce transport distances, reduce storage costs, reduce waste. But the coordination required is easier than you think, Do-hyun said, pulling up another screen. Earth's merchant fleets figured this out when we started trading between asteroid mining stations. You can't afford to haul unnecessary cargo across the solar system, so you learn to be precise about what goes where and when. Zonik looked at the projected cost savings and felt something that might have been panic. If this human's methods became standard practice, his shipping empire would become obsolete overnight. Mr. Do-hyun, he said carefully, have you shared these techniques with other shipping companies? Well, yes, I figured everyone would want to save money and improve service. Why would I keep it secret? News of the human innovation spread through the galactic communication network at light speed. On every world, in every system, beings who had accepted certain limitations for centuries suddenly learned that those limitations were self-imposed. On the agricultural world of Kepler 438, human botanist Min Ho had restored fertility to soil that had been barren for decades. His method involved introducing earth plants that local scientists had never heard of, using principles of soil biology that their advanced hydroponic systems had somehow overlooked. On the manufacturing hub of Proxima 3, human engineer Tae Ho had improved production efficiency by 30% using techniques he called continuous improvement and waste elimination. He seemed genuinely surprised that galactic manufacturers had not discovered these approaches themselves. In the mining systems of the Outer Rim, human geologist Su Jin was teaching asteroid miners how to extract rare elements using methods that required 1/10 the energy of conventional techniques. Each success sent ripples through established industries. Each solution revealed how many problems the galaxy had accepted as unsolvable were simply problems no one had approached correctly. Admiral Kite received reports hourly now, each one more alarming than the last. Sir, the Trilithium Miners Union has called for an emergency session. They're demanding trade protection against human competition. The Energy Consortium wants to know if we can restrict human access to power station technology. The Shipping Guild is petitioning for exclusive trade route licensing to prevent further disruption. And there are 17 formal complaints about humans providing unsolicited technical assistance to worlds that didn't request help. Kite looked at the growing pile of reports and realized he was watching the collapse of an economic system that had existed for thousands of years. Not through conquest or revolution, but through the simple application of common sense. Computer analysis. If current trends continue, what is the projected impact on galactic civilization? Analysis complete, Admiral. If human problem-solving methods spread at current rates, projected outcomes include 40% reduction in resource conflicts within 1 year, 60% decrease in manufacturing costs within 2 years, elimination of scarcity-based economic models within 5 years. And the negative impacts? Widespread unemployment in inefficient industries, collapse of established trade monopolies, fundamental restructuring of political power based on resource control. Kite sat back in his chair. The humans weren't conquering the galaxy. They were accidentally making it obsolete. Computer, draft a message to all sector commanders. Priority 1 classification. Ready, Admiral. Message begins. We are facing a crisis that threatens the stability of galactic civilization. A species called humans has appeared in our space, possessing technology and methods that make our established systems appear primitive and inefficient. They do not appear to be hostile, but their help may be more dangerous than any military threat we have ever faced. All commanders are to monitor human activity in their sectors and report immediately. End message. As the message went out across the galaxy, Admiral Kite wondered if he was already too late. The humans seemed to be everywhere at once, solving problems with such casual efficiency that entire civilizations were beginning to question everything they thought they knew. The galaxy had spent millennia building complex systems to manage complex problems. Now a species that barely qualified for space travel was proving that most of those problems weren't complex at all. They were just solved incorrectly. 6 months after Captain Wu Jin had arrived in Sector Kappa 7, the galaxy looked completely different. The massive war fleets that had once filled space with death and destruction now worked together on reconstruction projects. Former enemies shared resources and technology, guided by principles that seemed obvious once someone explained them. Wu Jin stood on the observation deck of his new headquarters, a modest space station that humans had built using materials salvaged from the old battlefields. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see Vorthak construction ships working alongside Nixari engineering vessels and Zephyrian bioships. They were building something that had never existed before, a joint research facility dedicated to solving galactic problems through cooperation rather than competition. "Captain," called Heywan from her workstation, "we're getting another request for consultation, this time from the Andromeda Trade Alliance. They want help with their transportation network." Wu Jin sighed. The request never stopped coming. Every day brought new problems that galactic civilization had been struggling with for centuries, all of which seemed to have relatively simple solutions once you approach them from a human perspective. "What kind of transportation problems?" he asked. "The usual. Inefficient routing, resource waste, excessive transit times. They're moving cargo the same way their ancestors did 500 years ago, just with bigger ships. Schedule a consultation for next week, and see if Do Hyun is available to help with the logistics analysis." The Terran Consultation Initiative had grown from 2 people in a cramped cargo ship to nearly 50 humans working across dozens of systems. Each specialist brought knowledge gained from Earth's harsh colonial experience, where resources were scarce and failure meant death. Engineer Heywan had become the galaxy's most requested infrastructure consultant. Her approach to energy distribution and system optimization had revolutionized power grids across 17 worlds. She still used the same basic laptop computer she had started with, claiming that sophisticated problems rarely required sophisticated tools. Biologist Min Ho had terraformed 3 supposedly dead worlds using techniques so simple that agricultural colleges now taught applied human biology as a required course. His success came from understanding that planets were not machines to be controlled, but ecosystems to be guided. Dr. Ye Jin had solved energy crises on 12 different research stations, always using modifications that local engineers described as embarrassingly obvious in hindsight. She had developed a reputation for asking questions that made experienced scientists reconsider fundamental assumptions. The changes went beyond technical improvements. The social and political structures of galactic civilization were adapting to a new reality where scarcity was no longer the driving force of economics. Commander Hyun Ki, now serving as coordinator of resource sharing for the former Warzone, had discovered that cooperation was more efficient than conquest. His military background proved useful for organizing large-scale projects, but the skills that made him valuable now were planning and logistics rather than tactics and weapons. "The humans taught us something important," he told a gathering of military leaders from across the galaxy. "They showed us that most conflicts arise from approaching problems incorrectly, not from fundamental incompatibilities between species." Tactician So-Ra had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation. Her mathematical mind, once focused on calculating optimal destruction, now worked on optimizing cooperation between different civilizations. She had developed new algorithms for resource distribution that ensured every world received what it needed without creating scarcity elsewhere. "The fascinating aspect of human problem solving," she explained to her former colleagues, is that they approach each challenge as if optimal solutions must exist. They do not accept that problems are unsolvable, only that solutions have not yet been discovered. Queen Mother Dongmin had restructured her entire swarm around principles of mutual aid rather than conquest. Her bioships, once instruments of war, now served as living factories that could grow everything from building materials to food crops. Her vast intelligence had found new purpose in coordinating complex projects across multiple species. The humans understand something we had forgotten, she told her daughters through the hive mind. Evolution is not about becoming stronger than your enemies. It is about becoming more effective at survival. Cooperation is often more effective than competition. But the changes had not been without resistance. Admiral Kite represented the old guard of galactic civilization, those who saw human influence as a threat to established order. They are dismantling everything we have built, he argued before the Galactic Council. Economic systems that maintained stability for millennia are collapsing. Military hierarchies that prevented wars are becoming obsolete. They claim to be helping, but they are destroying our way of life. Council leader Temra, an ancient being whose species had helped found galactic civilization, listened to the arguments with growing interest rather than concern. Admiral, she said, you speak of our way of life as if it were perfect, but was a galaxy at constant war truly the best we could achieve? Were economic systems based on scarcity and competition really the pinnacle of our development? They were stable, Kite insisted. Predictable. We understood the rules. And the humans have given us new rules. Simpler rules. More effective rules. Temra gestured to the data displays showing galactic productivity, resource distribution, and conflict resolution rates. Every metric had improved dramatically since human consultation had become available. The question, she continued, is not whether the humans are changing our civilization. They clearly are. The question is whether those changes are beneficial. The data spoke for itself. Resource conflicts had dropped by 80%. Manufacturing efficiency had improved across all sectors. Former military vessels were being converted to exploration and research ships. Worlds that had been isolated by economic disadvantage were now thriving members of an interconnected community. On Earth, Admiral Sung Ho of the Terran Fleet received regular reports about humanity's growing influence across the galaxy. The first contact protocols that had been carefully prepared for decades were proving unnecessary. Humans had made contact with galactic civilization, not through official diplomacy, but through individual initiative and practical help. Captain Wu Jin sends his regards, the communication specialist reported. He says formal first contact. Procedures might be redundant at this point. Apparently, we already have trade agreements with 47 different species and mutual aid pacts with 12 galactic governments. Admiral Sung Ho laughed. It was so typically human to accidentally establish galactic diplomatic relations while trying to help solve shipping problems. Any word on when he's coming home? He says Earth is welcome to send official ambassadors anytime, but he's got a backlog of consultation requests that will keep him busy for the next several years. Something about redesigning the galactic communication network to reduce lag time between distant systems. The transformation of galactic civilization continued, guided by principles that seemed revolutionary to ancient species, but were simply common sense to humans. Problems that had plagued the galaxy for millennia were solved not through advanced technology or superior intelligence, but through the simple application of perspectives learned in Earth's resource-poor colonies. Captain Wu Jin stood on his observation deck, watching alien construction crews build something that had never existed before. A galaxy based on cooperation rather than competition, efficiency rather than tradition, and practical solutions rather than theoretical complexity. His personal communicator buzzed with another incoming request, this time from a species he had never heard of, asking for help with something called dimensional transport coordination. "Hey Juan," he called, "have you ever worked on dimensional transport?" "Not specifically," she replied, "but it sounds like a routing problem. Probably just needs better scheduling and resource allocation." Wu Jin smiled. In a galaxy full of ancient civilizations and impossible technologies, the most powerful force had turned out to be human common sense. The galaxy had learned that resistance to practical solutions was indeed futile, not because humans were conquerors, but because their help was simply too useful to refuse. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Wu Jin suspected this was just the beginning. Earth had billions of people, each with their own perspective on solving problems. If two humans in a cargo ship could accidentally revolutionize galactic civilization, what would happen when humanity really started paying attention to the galaxy's challenges? The universe was about to find out.